In this video, I'm going to give you some insight on how I went about grading by learning objective in my Algebra 2 course. The first part of this was focusing on the daily homework. So the video will show how I set up daily homework on Schoology, how I would go about viewing the results for my class performance, and then how I would take that and set it up in Skyward and manually transfer it over. To support the concept of learning objectives, the first thing I did is once I had a folder set up in Schoology for the courses, for example here Chapter 7, I would then go to a document I had created earlier with all my learning objectives. Prior to starting this, I typed all my learning objectives in a Word document. So all I would do is once the folder was created, I went over to the little gear and did a drop down and I clicked on Edit. When you do that, you'll get this screen right here. All I did was open my Word document, highlighted my learning objectives, and did a copy and paste and got them directly into the description. And then I just click Save, and then it automatically would display on the front right when the students would look at the folder. Once the students clicked into the folder, here is what they saw. Because math is taught by section, I would have one folder for each section number that we had. This chapter had 6 sections. I always started by putting my complete template of class notes here at the front for the students. I actually supply booklets of all of my class notes that come from my smartboard so students can follow along and fill in notes as they go, and they have kind of a one-stop spot of having all of their chapter notes in one spot. Once you clicked into one of the folders, for example, if we click into section 7.5, we're going to get this view. This is a pretty typical looking folder. What it would start with now is this file here is the completed class notes. So as I would take notes in class on the smartboard, I would export that file to a PDF and then upload it to the folder. I also have another option. I've started making videos for all of my lessons. This video in particular is broken down with 3 different learning objectives. So you can see 7.5, A, C, and D are in this video. The homework for those, since it's broken down by learning objective, is going to follow that particular video. So for this one, there was just specific homework for A and D and not for C. So here's the homework for Algebra 2, 7.5A, and Algebra 2, 7.5D. And you're going to see when I set these quizzes up, I actually put some more details so the kids could know what the lesson was about. Then you're going to see this one also had another learning objective video for Objective B and its particular homework, Objective E, and then you don't see it, but then its particular homework. So in terms of what I used that you're going to see for the adding of materials in the folder, so if you clicked on adding materials, I primarily just referenced 2 key things. This third document here, add file and link, which I use to add the PDFs in my videos that I made in YouTube, and the puzzle piece to add a test or quiz. Now to set up a test or quiz, all you need to do is click on the test or quiz icon and it'll bring you to this screen here. It was very important in my naming convention that I was consistent. With students having a variety of classes and items showing up on their calendar, I think it's very important that a standard is set. And what I did for my standard is everything was first labeled with the course summary. So for algebra, I did ALG, and then I did the code for the learning objective, and then the summary name of the learning objective. And that was put up in the name section. I defaulted the points and just kept it at 100 points because I kept that consistent with the standard default in Skyward, which made it very easy to manage. The category I chose, I used one that was called bookwork, but you can make any categories that you want. You'll also need to go in and make sure you correct the appropriate period or quarter for your grading. Now, I don't use a paper planner. Instead, I just use Schoology as my planner. And I also want these tests and quizzes to show up on the student's calendar. Therefore, I would go into here and actually select a date, making it show up on the calendar. Once you've set up the test or quiz, you can go and click inside and add the details. There's the Questions tab, the Settings, Preview, Results, and Comments. In the Questions tab, all you need to do is click Add Questions, and there's 6 different types of questions that you can add. True and false and multiple choice. The ordering and the matching are very similar. The short answer essay is just as it sounds. It's one that does have to be manually corrected. And then the fill in the blank. For the math purposes, I used fill in the blank for about 80% of the time. In doing those, I had to be very cautious with my instructions on how answers should be typed. For example, I would have to tell students to either have no spaces, give them examples of what answers might look like. If I wanted an equation of a line to be y equals 1/2 x, I had to tell them to keep it as fractions. Or if I wanted decimals, I had to be very clear. Also, when you type in the various answers that are accepted, you have to be creative and think about what students might be typing so that they can still get it correct. Now, the second tab of settings I always had to use. Be careful if you do start a quiz. The availability, the way I set it up, always started as hidden. So I always had to come into settings and click it down to available now. You also have an attempt limit. My goal in this class was to allow students to use homework as the learning ground. So if they weren't right the first time, they could go back and correct it and fix it until they were content with it. So the attempt limit ranges from 1 to 20. I just went very conservative and said, let's assume someone's going to do it 20 times. So I gave them the maximum limit. And you can choose how you want to, which grade you want to take, either the highest grade or the last grade. I just kept it at the highest score. On average, I would say students probably re-entered homework 2 to 3 times. So I don't know if I ever really saw anyone do it 20. I also then had to change the question review to let them review it, let it be resumable, and let them view their submission. Be careful on the view submission. I did not want them to see the answers, so don't let them see that. Because they can go back and retake it, giving them the answers obviously would defeat the purpose. The third tab is a preview. And if you set up a quiz and you're wondering how it's going to look and feel on the screen, all you need to do is click this and you can get a feel for what the students will see. Under the Results tab, you could actually get the results for each class hour. Here you would select which period you were looking for if you had multiple sections. You could view by student results, which you're seeing here at the top, or you could review by questions, which is the view down here. If you were viewing by student results, it would show you all of the students. It would show you how many times they attempted the assignment and how many times they physically submitted it, and also their performance. And it will let you click in and look at their results for every attempt that they made. Looking at the by question results was very handy, especially if you had essay questions you had to manually correct. What you would do is find your question, view the responses, and then in there you would actually grade each essay question. If students were struggling on certain questions, I could come here and actually look at the statistics or look at the average scores and see if maybe it's a topic I should go reteach or talk to the students more about. Another feature of Schoology I again used was the Gradebook, and that's going to be found over to the left-hand side when you're in the course. If you click on Gradebook, you're going to have some options. Up here at the top are various drop-down boxes. This first drop-down box will give you all of the sections again for that particular course. This is the quarter, so I always had to make sure I was in the right quarter for my grades. Again, I told you for the categories, I only use this for homework, and I called it bookwork at the time. The due dates I didn't really use, nor did I use the view, but the due date feature would be nice if you want to look at your assignments in ascending or descending order. The view, you might want to see if you have grading that needs to be done. This will flag the ones you need to look at for that, and some other things that are listed here. What I did like is it gave me a nice overview of how many students had actually completed my assignment yet. Because what I needed to do is I normally would give the students about a 3-day window until I would actually take the scores out of Schoology and put them into Skyward. This gave me a quick overview so I could see, are there a lot of students still missing the homework? And from there I could kind of plan my day and either maybe give them some work time to get caught up or just keep going ahead into the lessons. When I was ready to enter the scores from Schoology into Skyward, I would come into Skyward and create an assignment. I had 2 different categories. I had formative assessments, which were 20% of my grade, and summative assessments, which were 80%. The summative assessments are mainly the tests and the projects for the chapter. The formative assessments was all the online homework and various quizzes I would give. When I went in and set up online homework, I would come into here, and under the description, I would just put the code for the learning objective, in this case 7.5D. In the detailed description, what I would do, I was open up my learning objectives in my Word document and copy and paste it in there. I think it's very important to have this detailed description because when it came conference time, I would print out the detailed student reports, and it was a wonderful summary of all of the learning objectives, and you could see the students' performance in one spot. The last part of here is the maximum score. It just defaults to 100 points, so I never had to change that, which was consistent with Schoology and made the process very quick and easy. For the data entry on this, again, because I'm putting in over 20 assignments per chapter, per just one class, I really wanted to be efficient. So a lot of the times, most of the homework was coming in at about 100 points for each student. So what I would do is once I clicked into the learning objective, in this case 7.5D, I would come over here to the mass assignment options, and I would just keep it at 100 points. Again, it defaults to that, and I just hit apply, and it would populate these at all 100 points. I would then go in and just change those that did not get 100 points. Now, the easiest way to actually get the data to be able to type it in to Skyward, what I found was this, is I went onto my computer at school into Skyward on the desktop, and then I pulled up either my smartphone or my iPad, and I clicked on the Schoology app. In the Schoology app, when you're there, you can click on these three bars, and then you can select grades. It will show all your courses. Go to your appropriate course and click on that. It's going to ask you which period do you want, so select the correct period. And then what it's going to do is actually show you all of your assignments. You know, again, I had many, many assignments listed. This is a quick snapshot. So what I would do is click on one of the assignments. When you clicked on it, it would give you the details in this fashion. It was in the exact same order as Skyward. I always made sure if I had a new student that I added them to Schoology so that they matched up properly. And you know, the student in the third position here was in the same student in the third position there. So I just had my phone over to the left, and I went in and I just changed the scores accordingly. And then I moved on. I would just hit clear out this screen, and I'd go back and hit the next learning objective and just kind of keep doing that. This sounds tedious, but it did actually go fairly quickly. Students also had the opportunity to submit work after the initial day that I pulled it from Schoology. If they did it after this time frame, they had to email me and let me know which learning objectives they completed. These had to be done no later than the chapter test. The second part of my grading by learning objective was doing a check-in quiz on paper. After the online homework was done for part 1, I then copied my learning objectives into a Word document table and added various problems. Students then took these like a quiz. When they turned them in to me, I corrected them as Schoology would do the homework. It was all or nothing. So for example, on this problem here, they had to get this portion and this portion correct. If both answers were correct, I gave them a check mark for that learning objective. If any part of the problem in the box was not correct, I left it open. Students then received a 1 grade in Skyward out of 100 points. If they got 4 out of 8 learning objectives correct, I would give them 50 points in Skyward. The points were very minimal compared to doing the daily homework, but students took this seriously because if they got a check mark on a learning objective on part 2 for the check-in quiz, but on the daily homework in part 1, they received less than 100 points, for example, 0 points or 40 points out of 100, I would now give them a full 100 points for that learning objective in Skyward. However, it was the student's responsibility to inform me if they had improved on a learning objective. The theory behind this is they're continuing to learn. If they didn't learn it in part 1, but now they've learned it in part 2, it still counts as learning. And this check-in quiz just went into the formative category, which was worth 20% of their overall grade. The last part of grading I did was their test. And that test was in the summative category, which was 80% of the grade. So that's really where the bulk of their performance would be showing up. And hopefully through using the part 1 homework and the part 2 check-in quizzes, they'll be able to succeed on their summative tests.